man runs. His mind races. Thoughts clash like swords in an unseen battle. Every impulse drags him, every desire pulls him from the path. And yet, within him, a whisper calls. Not loud, not demanding, silent, persistent. The whisper of stillness. In the villages of old Japan, warriors spoke of Fudōshin, the immovable mind. The mind that does not sway with fear, desire, or distraction, Sayadara's fear, an abyss of the dissolute pleasance, the mastery of self. A strength deeper than muscle, fiercer than any blade. Today, strength is measured in action, in noise, in ceaseless movement. But the truly strong, they find power in silence. They embrace the emptiness where ego dissolves, and fear no longer dictates the heart. This is the story of one man, restless and untested, who seeks mastery over his own spirit, and of the master who waits not to instruct, but to awaken. In the shadows of ancient trees, beside rivers that have seen centuries pass, he will learn that strength is not found in struggle alone, but in stillness. And in that stillness, he will meet himself. Chapter 1. The Restless Blade. Hiroto's footsteps echoed across the training yard, sharp against the morning frost. His breath came in ragged bursts, each inhale a battle against the weight of his own impatience. Steel rang against steel. The clatter was constant, yet hollow. Victory elusive. Recognition fleeting. Each strike he delivered carried not mastery, but desperation. He was young. Ambition burned in his veins hotter than fire, yet cooler than wisdom. He sought to prove himself through action, through visible results, through the nod of approval from peers and elders alike. And yet, despite the sweat, despite the bruises, despite the countless hours spent chasing perfection in the swing of his blade, something gnawed within him. A sense that all his effort, all his striving, was like water trying to hold shape in a storm. Hiroto did not yet know the truth. Strength without discipline is chaos. Victory without control is fleeting. The mind untrained is a battlefield more dangerous than any duel. And so his nights were restless, haunted by the echoes of failure, by imagined insults whispered in the corridors of memory, by the small, persistent voice that whispered, "You are not enough." It was on one such evening, when the sky bled red over the mountains, that Hiroto met Master Ryo. The monk appeared as if conjured from the shadow of the ancient cedar, his robes untouched by dust, his eyes reflecting the calm of a lake frozen in winter. Hiroto, exhausted and agitated, demanded instruction, seeking an easy path to strength. Ryo did not answer with words at first. He simply stood, silent, observing. The wind moved through the trees, leaves whispered. The world itself seemed to pause, and then the monk spoke, voice low, deliberate. "Strength is not in motion alone, young one. You seek victory outside, yet neglect the war within. Tell me, how can a sword strike true when the hand that wields it trembles with fear?" Hiroto bristled. He could not understand stillness. It felt like surrender. "I must act, master. I must fight. How will stillness make me stronger?" Ryo smiled faintly, as if humor and truth were one. Stillness is not surrender. It is presence. The mind that cannot remain calm will always be a slave. To fear, to desire, to the clamor of the world. Observe. Even the river shapes the stone, not through force, but persistence. So too must your spirit be immovable before it can be powerful. Hiroto's chest heaved with impatience. Words alone could not train the body. He wanted drills, strikes, duels. Yet beneath the irritation, a seed of curiosity stirred. Perhaps there was a method beyond movement, a mastery beyond muscle. Perhaps the noise in his mind, the shadows that clung to him in sleepless nights, could be faced. Not with fists, but with discipline of thought. Ryo gestured to the trees that lined the yard. "Come tomorrow. Bring nothing but yourself and your restlessness. If you are willing to face the mind, the path will open." That night, Hiroto lay awake, listening to the wind. The hum of his own thoughts seemed louder than ever, yet somehow, under the weight of expectation and desire, there was a strange comfort. The monk's words repeated. Presence first persistence. Immovable mind. They were not commands, but invitations. In that quiet, Hiroto understood the first truth of the warrior's journey. Motion alone does not make a blade sharp. Energy, untempered, is wasted. Fear, unacknowledged, is a master more cunning than any opponent. And the first step toward mastery is silence, not of the world, but of the self. Morning came with a cold clarity. Hiroto approached the training yard again, but this time his fists were not clenched in impatience. His steps were measured. His mind, though restless, carried the spark of inquiry. He had not yet embraced Fudōshin, but the seed had been sown. The restless blade had met the first shadow of stillness. And so he would follow the river of silence, where every breath would become a test of patience, and every moment a lesson in presence. Hiroto returned the next morning, the frost still clinging to the ground, the mountain sharp against the pale light. Master Ryo awaited him, seated cross-legged on a stone, eyes closed, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate his stillness. Hiroto felt the familiar urge to fidget, to fill the silence with movement, yet the monk's presence demanded something different. Patience. Sit, Ryo instructed, voice calm, carrying the weight of centuries. Do not speak, do not move. Only observe. The world does not begin and end with your desire. Hiroto obeyed, though uneasily. He felt exposed, as if silence had stripped away armor he had built from pride and constant motion. His mind raced, grasping for distractions. Thoughts of training, of honor, of victory. Each attempt to control the restless surge of impulses only revealed its stubbornness. His chest tightened, fingers trembled. Yet he stayed. Hours passed. Hiroto counted none. Minutes bled into one another. He noticed the way the wind moved through the pines, carrying with it the scent of moss and winter's chill. He felt the weight of the stone beneath him, the slow rhythm of his own heartbeat. The first flickers of understanding emerged. Stillness was not emptiness. It was awareness, presence. Attention focused with unwavering discipline. Ryo's voice broke the quiet. The mind is a sword, Hiroto. Unsharpened, it cuts nothing. Tempered, it can cut through illusion, through fear, through the chaos that would claim the unready. You cannot fight the world until you have fought yourself. Hiroto's thoughts, once a torrent, began to settle. He saw patterns in the agitation, recognized the small lies he told himself. I must act. I must prove. I must be more than I am. And for the first time, he questioned them, not to discard, but to witness, to know their shape, their weight, to face them without panic. Days turned into a rhythm. Morning meditation, the careful sharpening of his blade, the quiet tending of the yard. Every action became deliberate. Every breath measured. The restless energy that once drove him wild was now tempered, channeled. He discovered that discipline was not punishment but freedom, the freedom to act with clarity, to respond rather than react, to move without fear. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the mountains, Ryo approached Hiroto while he practiced a slow kata, each movement deliberate, each stance held with intention. You have learned to quiet the storm, the monk said, not to defeat it, but to endure it. Your sword moves with your mind, not against it. You are beginning to understand what many never will. That strength does not shout, it waits. That courage is not a burst of fury, but the patient steadiness of spirit. Hiroto lowered his sword, chest heaving, not from exertion alone, but from the recognition of transformation. He felt a small, quiet pride, untainted by ego. For the first time, he knew that victory over the self was the most profound triumph. The restless blade had met its first master, not in combat, but in silence. As night fell, Hiroto gazed at the stars, their light unwavering against the darkness. He understood that this was only the beginning. The mind, once a tempest, could now be a river, calm on the surface, deep and powerful beneath. Fear still existed, but it no longer dictated his steps. Desire remained, but it no longer clouded his judgment. He was learning the art of presence, the first taste of Fudōshin. And as the mountains held their quiet vigil, Hiroto knew the path ahead would demand more than motion or strength. It would demand patience, endurance, and unwavering discipline. Soon, the river of silence would teach him that every breath, every thought, and every moment could become a crucible for transformation. Chapter 2. The River of Silence. Hiroto followed Master Ryo along the narrow mountain path, the air thin and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and stone. No words were spoken at first. None were necessary. Each step seemed to echo against the cliffs, a soft percussion that matched the rhythm of Hiroto's pulse. The river lay ahead like a vein of silver sunlight, cutting through the forest with patient persistence. Its surface shimmered, deceptively calm, concealing the currents that moved deep and unseen. This river has its own discipline, Ryo said finally, voice low and deliberate, carrying over the water's murmur. It does not hurry. It does not falter. It flows, regardless of obstacles. The mind must do the same. Hiroto stared, eyes tracing the ripples. His own thoughts, once like the river in storm, leapt and crashed relentlessly. He wanted to act, to strike, to test himself. But here, action alone would accomplish nothing. Silence was the teacher. Observation, the weapon. He sat on a flat stone near the riverbank, knees drawn, shoulders tense. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying a subtle lesson. Everything endures, everything yields, everything transforms. Days merged into each other. The monotony seemed at first a punishment. Hiroto spent hours observing the water, noting the stones it smoothed, the branches it carried, the small eddies that formed and vanished without notice. Each breath he took became deliberate, measured, anchored in the present. Meditation was not stillness of body alone. It was the discipline of attention, the quiet alignment of thought with reality. Every tension in his muscles, every anxious surge of the heart became a point of focus. Ryo guided him with subtle interventions. Place your hands in the earth. Feel the soil. Let it remind you that all strength arises from support unseen. You cannot control the wind, nor the water, nor the mind. Only your response is yours to master. Hiroto's first attempts were clumsy. The mind resisted, rebelling against inactivity. Thoughts leapt like startled fish. Memories of failure, imagined criticisms, the fear of inadequacy. They all surfaced with insistent persistence. Yet with each session by the river, he learned to notice, to acknowledge, and to let them pass without chasing. Neuroscience would later describe this as metacognition, the awareness of thought as an object, rather than the entirety of self. But Hiroto did not need a label. He only needed practice. The river became a mirror for his inner turbulence. A sudden gust of wind, the ripple of water over a stone, the call of a distant bird, all tested his ability to remain present. Distraction, he discovered, was like a current. If resisted with force, it would sweep him away. If observed without attachment, it passed harmlessly. This was the essence of Fudōshin. Immovability not through rigidity, but through awareness and acceptance. Even his labor by the riverside became training. Chopping wood, stacking stones, carrying water, all tasks simple in appearance, profound in effect. Each act required attention. Each repetition became a meditation. The ordinary became extraordinary, as though the universe itself conspired to teach through every stone, every droplet of water, every whispering leaf. Ryo watched quietly, occasionally offering a phrase, never an explanation. The warrior who cannot endure stillness cannot endure life's storms. Your mind, Hiroto, is your first battlefield. Master it, and all else follows. By the third week, Hiroto felt subtle shifts. Anxiety no longer clung to him like a shadow. The pull of anger and impatience weakened. Even fear, the fear that had once driven him toward reckless action, was now only a signal, noticed, acknowledged, and left to dissipate. The river taught him patience, presence, and the quiet power of disciplined observation. And as the river carved its way through stone, so too would Hiroto's spirit be shaped, until the trial of shadows awaited, testing whether his stillness could endure the fires of battle. Hiroto awoke before dawn, the river bathed in silver light, mist curling like smoke from hidden embers. The world was quiet, yet alive. Every sound, every subtle movement demanded his attention. He knelt at the river's edge, cupping cold water in his hands. The chill made him shiver, but it anchored him in the present. Each breath became deliberate, a bridge between body and mind. Ryo appeared without a sound, his robe barely stirring. You have observed the river, he said, but now you must let it observe you. Let your mind be like its surface, still, reflecting all, disturbed by nothing, Hiroto tried. He closed his eyes, let the wind brush his skin, listened to the current, felt the pull of the stones beneath the water. The first moments were frustrating. Thoughts surged like rapids, dragging memories, doubts, and desires. But gradually, he learned the rhythm of letting go. Each thought, acknowledged and released, was like a leaf carried downstream. No struggle, no attachment. In this silence, Hiroto began to notice the hidden patterns of the world, and of himself. He saw the flow of cause and effect in the simplest acts. The stone that fell into the water, creating ripples that spread and faded. The wind that bent the trees, leaving them unbroken. The river that carved mountains, not in haste, but through persistence. Nature revealed the same truth the masters had always spoken. Strength without patience is brittle. Power without awareness is blind. The greatest mastery is the mastery of one's own spirit. Ryo watched, guiding without interference. Discipline is not punishment, Hiroto, he said. It is an alignment. The body, the mind, the breath, the spirit, they move together or they falter alone. Observe your impulses and do not act immediately. Observe your fear and do not flee. Observe your desire and do not grasp. All will pass and you will remain. The days turned into weeks. Hiroto's muscles strengthened not only through manual labor but through the tension of concentrated presence. His mind, once a storm of distraction, became a deep reservoir. Every small action, lifting a log, carrying water, tending the fire, was deliberate. Each act of observation, each anchored breath, chipped away at the restlessness he had carried for so long. He discovered that fear loses its power when unchallenged by reaction. Each challenge, each discomfort became a meditation. By the end of his first month by the river, Hiroto could sit for hours without agitation, the current passing unnoticed, the wind brushing without distraction. His reflection in the water no longer seemed fragmented. His ego, once a roaring tide demanding recognition, had grown still, like a lake at night. Presence became not a goal, but a companion, and with it came a quiet confidence, a confidence rooted not in achievement, but in unshakable discipline. Ryo spoke one evening, the sun sinking behind the mountains, turning the river gold. "You have begun to endure the silence, Hiroto. You have faced your turbulence without surrendering to it. Know this. The world will test you with storms far fiercer than these quiet days. Your mettle is proven not when calm surrounds you, but when chaos seeks to unseat you. Tomorrow, you will leave the river. The real trial awaits, where presence and stillness will be your only allies." Hiroto looked at the river, its surface now a mirror of the sky. He understood that strength was cultivated, not conquered, that the river's lesson, patience, observation, disciplined presence, was now flowing within him. He felt the stirrings of a warrior reborn, tempered in silence, ready to face the next shadow. And so, the river's teaching complete, Hiroto would step into fire, the trial of shadows, where his immovable mind would be tested against the chaos of battle itself. Chapter 3. The Trial of Shadows. The morning air was thick with tension, though no wind stirred the trees. Hiroto stood at the edge of the clearing, the scent of pine mingling with the faint metallic tang of anticipation. Across from him, the warriors of the neighboring clan assembled, eyes sharp, bodies coiled like panthers. Their leader, a man seasoned in countless skirmishes, regarded Hiroto with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Hiroto's heart beat, not with fear, but with awareness. He could feel the old instincts rising, anger at the perceived challenge, pride at his own growing skill, fear at the unknown consequences. For years, these shadows had driven his every action. Now, they flickered at the edges of consciousness, noted but unmoving. He remembered the river, the stones, the wind, the patience, the silence. Presence. Master Ryo stood at a distance, eyes soft yet unyielding, observing. He said nothing. He did not intervene. His silence was a teaching in itself. Trust the mind you have honed. Trust the discipline you have cultivated. The duel began with a simple bow, ritualized, deliberate. Hiroto advanced with calm precision. Every strike he delivered was measured, every retreat intentional. Unlike before, when adrenaline dictated movement, now the rhythm of combat was dictated by observation, anticipation, and restraint. His body moved as an extension of his mind, fluid, responsive, unhurried. The first clash of steel rang sharp in the clearing. Hiroto felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, yet it did not rule him. Anger flared in his opponent's eyes. Fear trembled in his own chest. But he did not react to either. Instead, he observed, adjusted, flowed. Each attack met a counter, each feint met a prepared stance. The battle was no longer merely physical. It was a meditation in motion, a dance between impulse and control. Hiroto noticed the subtle tells in his opponent's body, the shift of weight, the tightening of a fist, the fraction of a breath before a strike. These cues, invisible to the untrained eye, became guides for action. His sword moved like water around rock. Inevitable, persistent, calm. Ego had no role here. Only presence determined outcome. Time seemed to slow. Moments stretched, the clash of steel punctuated by the whisper of wind through the pines. Hiroto's breath, steady and deliberate, anchored him. His mind, once a storm of distraction and desire, was a quiet lake, reflecting every movement, every intention. He realized the profound truth that Ryo had imparted. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is mastery over it. The warriors of the opposing clan attacked in succession, a flurry of energy designed to overwhelm. Yet Hiroto met each strike with composure, each counter with clarity. The chaotic motions that had once terrified him were now opportunities for observation, for discipline, for applied mastery. He began to sense not just the movements of his adversaries, but the rhythm of the duel itself, a living entity shaped by presence, patience, and precision. Even as sweat dripped down his temples and muscles burned with exertion, Hiroto remained anchored. The duel became less a fight and more a crucible, testing the harmony of mind and body. The shadows of anger, fear, and pride still lingered, but they were no longer masters. They were merely phenomena to be observed, acknowledged, and transcended. And as the final strike approached, Hiroto would discover that the true victory was not in defeating the opponent, but in the unshakable calm that had become his secret weapon. The sun had climbed higher, turning the clearing into a stage of light and shadow. Hiroto faced his opponent one last time, the air vibrating with tension. His chest rose and fell steadily, every muscle coiled, not with panic, but with readiness. He felt the surge of fear, the same fear that had once ruled him. But now it was a signal, not a master. He acknowledged it, let it exist, and moved through it with intention. Steel met steel, a clash ringing sharp and clear. Each movement was precise, deliberate, flowing seamlessly from observation to action. Hiroto noticed the tiny inconsistencies in his opponent's posture. The subtle lean before a strike, the brief hesitation in his grip. Where others would have charged blindly, Hiroto responded calmly, every step, every swing measured. He had learned the river's lesson. Patience tempers force, stillness guides power. His opponent's attacks intensified, a storm of blows meant to break resolve. Yet Hiroto remained anchored, his mind an unmoved core within the chaos. Each strike was countered not with reactionary force, but with quiet certainty. He did not act from ego, nor from the desire to dominate. He acted because his mind, trained in silence and observation, had discerned the rhythm of the duel. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The world contracted to the space between breath and motion. Hiroto felt the culmination of weeks by the river, months of disciplined practice, the presence that allowed action without haste, control without rigidity. Fear had become a teacher, anger a tool, pride a shadow observed but never followed. With one final, deliberate movement, Hiroto shifted his stance, guiding his opponent's momentum and redirecting it. The adversary's balance faltered, and he yielded, stepping back, recognition in his eyes. The duel was over. Hiroto did not raise his sword in triumph. He simply stood, calm, unwavering, the echo of the river and the mountains inside him. Master Ryo approached silently, placing a hand on Hiroto's shoulder. "You have faced the storm outside and the storm within," he said. "The sword obeys not the hand, but the mind that wields it. Remember this, Hiroto. Mastery is harmony, not dominance. Courage is control, not the absence of fear." Hiroto exhaled, the tension leaving his body in a slow, deliberate release. He felt something profound, the realization that a warrior's greatest weapon was not the blade, but the calm within the mind. He understood now that all external victories, titles, recognition, conquered opponents, were fleeting without inner mastery. Presence was power. Discipline was strength. Stillness was the foundation upon which all else was built. The sun began its descent, long shadows stretching across the clearing. Hiroto sheathed his sword, not in triumph, but in understanding. His transformation was no longer theoretical. It was embodied, alive in every measured breath, every poised step. He had learned that action without awareness is chaos, and that restraint, when guided by presence, is more powerful than any uncontrolled strike. As night approached, Hiroto looked to Master Ryo, gratitude in his eyes. "I see now," he said softly. "The immovable mind Ford is the true warrior." Ryo nodded, silent approval passing between them. The trial had ended, yet the path continued. Hiroto's spirit had been tempered in fire, his mind sharpened in stillness. He had faced the shadows of ego, fear, and anger, and emerged disciplined, aware, and unshakable. With the trial of shadows behind him, Hiroto would return to the monastery, where the final lessons of the immovable spirit awaited, a journey from mastery to transcendence. Chapter 4. The Immovable Spirit. The monastery lay quiet under a morning mist, its wooden beams softened by the haze of early light. Hiroto stepped onto the stone path, the echoes of his journey still vibrating in his muscles and mind. The duel, the river, the relentless hours of meditation, they had shaped him into something new, though subtle. He felt it in the measured rhythm of his breath, in the calm steadiness of his gaze, in the gentle assurance of each movement. Master Ryo awaited him at the main hall, seated on the veranda overlooking the valley. His eyes, patient and deep, reflected the sunlight glinting through the pines. "You have faced fire," Ryo said softly, "and survived. Yet the journey does not end with victory or defeat. Presence, Hiroto, is continuous. The immovable mind is not a trophy, but a way of being." Hiroto bowed, not in ceremony, but in acknowledgement of his own transformation. The familiar hunger for recognition, the compulsion to prove his worth, had loosened its grip. He realized now that the true path of the warrior was inward, a discipline of mind and spirit that demanded no applause, no validation from others. The world may never see the effort, the quiet persistence, yet that did not diminish its value. Days passed in simple rituals, tending the gardens, drawing water from the spring, practicing the slow kata that had once been exercises in impatience, now acts of deliberate presence. Each motion, each breath, became a reaffirmation of discipline, a meditation in movement. Even the smallest tasks held lessons: patience in the stacking of stones, humility in cleaning the hall, attention in the sharpening of a blade. The ordinary was the crucible in which Hiroto's spirit was tempered. Master Ryo observed silently, speaking only when necessary. "Strength is invisible," he said one evening, voice low yet resonant. "It is in the choices made when no one watches. It is in restraint, in discipline, in humility. It is the courage to remain steady when the world demands chaos. Hiroto reflected on the journey that had brought him here, Bufari Obais, of his restlessness, of his the river that our patience, the trial of shadows that tested his calm. Each challenge had been a mirror, showing him not the enemy or the world, but himself. Fear, anger, and pride were no longer masters. They were signals, noticed and acknowledged, but never followed. The immovable mind was not a final state, but a practice, a continuous cultivation. He observed the novices in the monastery, young men and women eager for strength, yet chasing it in haste. Hiroto's presence alone became instruction. He did not correct with words, nor display superiority. His calm, steady gaze, the quiet confidence in his posture, the unwavering rhythm of breath and action, all spoke louder than any command. Leadership, he realized, was not assertion. It was embodiment. Influence came not from force, but from the gravity of disciplined presence. Even as he walked among the trees, the wind brushing against his robe, Hiroto felt a profound shift. The chaos of life, the unpredictable challenges, the conflicts, the distractions, would come. Yet he no longer feared them. Each obstacle was another opportunity to apply discipline, to anchor presence, to exercise the strength of stillness. The warrior had become a vessel for calm authority, a mind unshakable, a spirit tempered by practice. And as the sun sank behind the mountains, Hiroto would discover the final lesson, that true mastery is invisible, and that the immovable spirit shapes the world not through conquest, but through quiet, deliberate presence. Evening settled over the monastery, painting the courtyard in soft amber and shadow. Hiroto moved slowly, each step deliberate, as if the stones beneath his feet had a rhythm of their own. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke from the hearth, the mossy aroma of the stone walls, and the subtle reminder that time, like all things, was fleeting yet eternal. Master Ryo joined him, walking in silence. After a long pause, he spoke. "You have learned the way of stillness, Hiroto, but the final test is not in swords or rivers or trials. It is in life itself. The immovable spirit is not a posture, nor a series of actions. It is a presence that touches all you do. It shapes the world quietly, without spectacle, without demand." Hiroto understood. He had once sought glory, recognition, victory over others. Now he realized the only victories that mattered were those over his own impulses, his own ego. Even the smallest acts, feeding the fire, tending the gardens, listening to a student's question, were opportunities to embody calm authority. The mind, once turbulent, had become a stable force, capable of meeting life's storms without being swept away. He thought of the river, its persistent flow shaping stone with patient force. He thought of the trial of shadows, where action guided by presence triumphed over chaos. And he realized that the lessons were interconnected. Stillness was not inaction. Discipline was not rigidity. Strength was not external. They were qualities cultivated within, invisible yet potent, affecting everything without effort. Master Ryo observed Hiroto's reflection in the river nearby, the water still, mirroring both sky and trees. "True strength," Ryo said softly, "is like this reflection, visible only because the mind is clear. The immovable spirit does not seek glory, yet it alters the world simply by being. Every choice, every habit, every disciplined action is a stone placed in the river of existence." Hiroto nodded. He felt the truth resonate deep in his chest, a quiet certainty that no words could fully capture. Life's battles were often internal, and the greatest victories were measured not by conquest, but by composure, by the mastery of one's own mind. The path of Fudōshin was endless. Mastery was not a destination, but a continuous journey, a practice renewed with every breath, every challenge, every encounter. As the last light faded behind the mountains, Hiroto walked among the novices, offering a steady gaze, a guiding presence. He corrected without words, led without asserting, inspired without demanding. The transformation was subtle, invisible to the untrained eye, but profound in effect. His spirit was tempered, his mind unshakable, his presence commanding yet gentle. The warrior had become whole. He paused at the edge of the river, the water reflecting the stars now emerging overhead. Hiroto closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and allowed himself to simply exist, anchored, aware, and free. Strength was no longer measured in action, nor in acclaim, nor in the thrill of conquest. True strength resided in stillness, where discipline tempered fear, where presence guided action, and where the spirit found freedom within itself. And so, Hiroto embodied the immovable spirit, not for recognition, not for glory, but because stillness, discipline, and presence had become inseparable from his being. The warrior was complete, the mind unshakable, the spirit free. True strength is not in motion, but in stillness, where discipline tempers fear and presence masters the spirit.